Before you swipe away, imagine a single US quarter sitting in your pocket worth more than a luxury car, more than a full year's salary, more than most people will ever save. This is not a myth. This is real American history hiding in plain sight, and millions of people have already spent these coins without knowing what they had today. You are about to discover the top 5 most valuable US quarter-dollar coins ever found. Coins created by historic shortages, wartime mistakes, and minting errors. Coins so rare collectors hunt them for decades. Watch closely, because number 1 is legendary. Number 5. Imagine holding a coin so common yet so extraordinary that it connects your fingers to centuries of American identity, and every time its silver edge flashes in the light, it whispers the story of revolution, sacrifice, national pride, and a celebration unlike anything the country had ever experienced. Imagine a coin minted not just to be spent, but to become a symbol, a souvenir, and a legacy of the United States turning to 100 years old. And imagine that in the palm of your hand sits the 1976 quarter-dollar, a coin that millions of people believe they already know, yet when its true story is finally told, it reveals more mystery, more drama, and more national significance than anyone ever expected. And today you and I are going to travel deep into the world of this historic bicentennial quarter, exploring how it was designed, why it exists, what secrets are hidden inside its production numbers, how it moved through the hands of everyday Americans, and how it became one of the most iconic circulating commemorative coins ever made in the history of the United States Mint. Story of the 1976 quarter dollar begins long before the first coin was struck, because the dream of celebrating the American bicentennial already existed. In the early 1960s, as the nation prepared for a milestone that only a handful of civilizations in history had ever reached, 200 years of sovereignty and endurance, the government wanted symbols that every citizen could hold in their hands. Daily reminders that the country had grown from a struggling group of colonies into a powerful nation, and the mint was given the task of producing circulating coins that would carry this spirit forward and be used by millions every single day. Planning took years. Committees discussed ideas, artists submitted designs, and the conversation surrounding what the bicentennial coinage should represent was intense. It had to honor the past, inspire the future, and feel unmistakably American, while still functioning as everyday currency. The quarter dollar was chosen as a centerpiece because it was one of the most widely used denominations, and Americans were already deeply familiar with the classic George Washington portrait on the obverse. But for the reverse, the United States wanted something new, something that captured the patriotic emotions rising across the country. A national design competition was launched, giving artists the chance to influence a coin that would enter circulation by the hundreds of millions, and 3 winning designs were ultimately selected for the dime, quarter, and half dollar. The quarter's winning design belonged to Jack L.R., a talented engraver whose depiction of a colonial drummer standing proudly with a torch of victory in the background struck a powerful balance between Revolution-era imagery and modern celebration. His artwork immediately resonated with the selection committee because it felt alive. It felt like a story frozen in metal, and it fit perfectly with the message of the bicentennial. When the design was approved, the mint prepared for production on a scale the country had rarely seen. To meet the enormous demand expected for the 1976 commemorative coinage, the mint began striking coins in 1975, but intentionally struck none dated 1975. Instead, all quarters produced in both 1975 and 1976 would carry the dual date 1776, 1976, a subtle but symbolic reminder that America was honoring its past while standing firmly in its present. This dual date would become one of the most memorable and recognizable features of the coin, and even today collectors immediately associate the 2 dates with the bicentennial celebration. Production took place at multiple mint facilities, including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and each location played a vital role in ensuring enough coins reached every part of the nation. Philadelphia and Denver struck the circulating copper, nickel-clad coins, while San Francisco produced Special collector strikes, including 40% silver versions that would one day become highly sought after in coin collections worldwide. The decision to strike silver quarters again, after so many years, was deliberate, as the mint wanted to offer something special and nostalgic to Americans who remembered the silver era before 1965. The silver bicentennial quarter also provided a way to honor the precious metal tradition that had shaped U.S. coinage for more than a century. The coins entered circulation. Americans embraced them instantly. People pulled them from change, children saved them in jars, and grandparents gave them as keepsakes to mark the bicentennial year. They were not rare, but they were meaningful, physical piece of a national birthday celebration, and for many families, collecting bicentennial quarters became a shared experience, a symbol of patriotism, and a way to connect generations through a small metallic reminder of 1776. But to truly understand the 1976 quarter, must also understand the history of the Washington quarter itself. First issued in 1932 to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington, the Washington quarter was never meant to be permanent. Yet it remained in circulation for decades, and by the time the bicentennial approached, it was an American icon in its own right. The decision to keep Washington on the obverse while changing the reverse allowed the mint to merge to powerful historical celebrations: Washington's bicentennial and the nation's bicentennial, weaving the identity of the first president directly into the story of the country's 200-year milestones. The bicentennial celebration unfolded across the United States. Fireworks, parades, special events, and nationwide ceremonies reflected the pride of a country, honoring its endurance and evolution. The 1976 quarter circulated through all of it, passing from vendor to tourist, from family to family, from collector to collector, becoming a silent witness to a once-in-a-lifetime celebration, and its drummer boy image became instantly recognizable even to people who knew nothing about coinage, because symbols of the revolution echoed everywhere in advertising, posters, school lessons, and patriotic media banned the general public. The coin also captured the attention of numismatists who studied its varieties, its strike quality, and its minting characteristics. Subtle differences between the Philadelphia and Denver issues attracted collectors, and the silver San Francisco strikes developed their own devoted following. Over time, specialists identified varieties such as strong strike examples, weak strike examples, small die markers, and differences in the sharpness of the drummer design, each contributing to the coin's deeper numismatic story. Over the decades, the bicentennial quarter transitioned from ordinary change to a nostalgic treasure. As fewer and fewer examples were found in circulation, people realized that the nation had moved on, and newer commemoratives had taken the spotlight. But the 1976 quarter remained unique because it wasn't just commemorating a single event, it represented an entire country, reflecting on 200 years of independence and identity, and that emotional value only grew stronger with time. Collectors today often seek pristine, uncirculated examples, proof versions, and silver strikes. Many families still keep the ones they saved years ago, and some even discover that the bicentennial quarter they set aside has become a cherished family item, a reminder of a historic celebration they lived through or inherited stories about. And as coin collectors continue to grow around the world, the 1976 bicentennial quarter remains one of the most recognized and beloved American coins ever issued. Its legacy of the 1976 quarter is powerful because it represents more than metal. It represents memory, unity, celebration, and national pride. It carries the heartbeat of the American story, and even today, when someone finds one in their change, it sparks a moment of excitement, because it is not just any coin, it is a symbol frozen in time, connecting the modern world with the dream of freedom first declared in 1776, and the pride celebrated in 1976. This is why the bicentennial quarter's journey continues year after year, passed down, collected, studied, and remembered, and as long as the United States honors its history, the 1976 quarter dollar will continue to shine as one of the greatest commemorative coins the nation has ever produced, and its drummer boy will forever stand as a reminder of the courage of the revolution and the celebration of a nation that reached 200 years of independence and moved boldly forward into its future. Imagine stepping into a landscape where ancient winds have sculpted mountains made of sand, where every grain carries the memory of thousands of years, and where the towering dunes rise like golden giants against the dramatic backdrop of the rugged Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And now imagine that this breathtaking world, a place shaped by time, weather, and the unstoppable forces of nature, is captured forever on the surface of a single $quarter coin, the 2014 Great Sand Dunes National Park. America the Beautiful, quarter, a piece of circulating art that tells a much larger story than most people ever realize, and today we are diving deep into that story, peeling back the layers of history, geology, culture, minting, innovation, and national significance that transformed this quarter into one of the most iconic releases of its decade. And by the time you reach the end of this journey, you will never look at a 25-cent piece the same way again, because this is not just a coin, this is a portal into one of the most extraordinary natural wonders in the United States, and a symbol of how America chooses to preserve and celebrate its greatest landscapes. The story of the Great Sand Dunes Quarter begins long before the United States Mint announced its 2014 lineup, long before coin collectors added it to their albums, and even long before the national park itself was established. Because the origins of the Great Sand Dunes reach back over 10,000 years, shaped by geological forces that began with the uplift of the Rocky Mountains and the shifting of ancient lakes and streams as powerful winds swept across the San Luis Valley. The sand was pushed toward the base of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, where it accumulated, creating the tallest sand dunes in North America, some rising more than 750 feet high and stretching across 30 square miles of ever-shifting desert-like terrain. And yet, despite this harsh and dramatic environment, the dunes and surrounding wetlands became a vital home for early Native American peoples, including the Ute, Apache, and Navajo, who left behind traces of their presence through artifacts, trails, legends, and sacred stories that describe the dunes as a place of power, mystery, and spiritual significance. When Spanish explorers crossed the region in the 1600s and 1700s, they documented the astonishing dunes in their journals, remarking on the shimmering mountains of sand that seemed to appear like a golden sea trapped against the mountains. And later in the 1800s, as trappers, soldiers, settlers, and prospectors moved through Colorado, they too were struck by the silent majesty of the dunes, many believing they were witnessing a natural phenomenon unlike any other in the American West. As railroad travel expanded in the late 19th century, the dunes became a magnet for adventurous photographers, writers, and early tourists, whose fascination helped push the area toward recognition as a place worth protecting. By the early 20th century, concerns began to grow that private companies could exploit the region, removing its natural resources or altering its fragile landscape. And in 1932, President Herbert Hoover officially designated the dunes as a national monument, protecting their unique environment for future generations. Decades later, in 2004, Congress expanded the boundaries and elevated the status to Great Sand Dunes National Park and preserve, safeguarding not only the dunes themselves but also the surrounding mountains, forests, grasslands, and the vital Medano Creek, an unusual seasonal stream that plays a critical role in the park's ecosystem and famously creates a natural beach where families splash in the cool waters beneath towering dunes. When the United States Mint launched the America the Beautiful Quarters program in 2010, a sweeping series honoring national parks, monuments, and historic sites from every state and territory, Great Sand Dunes was selected as the fourth release of 2014, representing Colorado and offering artists a chance to capture one of the most visually striking landscapes in the country. The Mint's artists and sculptors faced a challenge unlike any other because the dunes constantly move, change, and shift, and translating a living landscape into a static image on metal required extraordinary creativity. Several designs were proposed, featuring sweeping views of wind-shaped dunes contrasted against the dramatic mountain backdrop, but the final selected design created by Joel Iskowitz and sculpted by Phoebe Hemphill chose a more intimate, human-centered scene showing a father and child playing at the edge of Medano Creek with the towering dunes rising behind them, an image that captures not only the grandeur of the landscape, but also the emotional connection people form with this extraordinary place. When the coin was released in June 2014, collectors were quick to recognize its beauty, uniqueness, and emotional storytelling. Unlike coins that depict monuments, buildings, or historical figures, this design invites viewers into the scene, making them feel as though they were standing barefoot in the cool, rippling waters, looking up at the massive dunes that stretch toward the horizon. This blend of nature, humanity, and motion made the Great Sand Dunes Quarter one of the standout issues of the series, and demand for high-grade, uncirculated, and proof versions rose quickly, especially the silver-proof editions, which showcase striking detail in the dunes and mountains. The minting process itself adds another layer to the story, because producing a coin with such fine lines, intricate landscape contours, and subtle rippled textures required precision engraving, masterful die preparation, and high-pressure striking at the Denver and Philadelphia mints, where millions of circulation strikes were produced alongside special collector versions at the San Francisco Mint. Each of these coins acts as a miniature artwork, a tiny metal postcard from a place where natural forces have shaped beauty. For millennia, collectors often point to the symbolic value of the design, because the presence of the father and child represents the generational importance of national parks, reminding us that these protected landscapes are not just scenic wonders but legacies that must be passed forward. The dunes behind them symbolize endurance, timelessness, and natural power, while the flowing Medano Creek ties the past, present, and future together. Just as water has shaped the land over thousands of years, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains rising in the distance stand like ancient guardians, their peaks catching the sunlight in shades of red at dawn and dusk, which gave them their Spanish name, meaning blood of Christas. We peel back the layers of this coin, we discover more than a pretty design, because the Great Sand Dunes Quarter connects geology, history, culture, environmental conservation, and the human experience into a single piece of circulating currency. Millions of Americans who may never travel to Colorado still encounter this landscape every time they handle the coin, reminding them of the natural treasures scattered across the nation and deepening awareness of the places that define the American identity. Over the years since its release, the 2014 Great Sand Dunes Quarter has continued to gain respect among collectors, appreciated not only for its beauty, but for its storytelling power and for the deeper meanings embedded within its imagery. It stands as a symbol of the relentless forces of nature, the importance of preservation, and the joy of discovery that comes with exploring lands shaped by wind, water, and time. And as we expand this history across a full 2-hour journey, we can explore the ancient geology that formed the dunes, the early cultures that lived within the valley, the explorers who chronicled the land, the establishment of the monument, and later the national park, the artistic process behind the coin's creation, the technical aspects of minting, and the continuing impact of the quarter within the collecting world. Imagine holding a small piece of metal that carries the weight of centuries, a tiny disc that whispers the stories of revolution, sacrifice, national identity, and the evolution of America itself. Now picture the 2021 quarter, a coin minted during a year of transition, change, and reflection, not just for the United States Mint, but for the entire nation. This coin is not merely a piece of currency, it is a time capsule, a storyteller, and a monument to the past unfolding in the palm of your hand. And as you look closer, you discover that the 2021 quarter marks the end of one legendary coin series and the rise of a new era of American symbolism. And that is exactly where our journey begins today, because this is the story of the 2021 quarter, its creation, its meaning, its artistry, and the hidden history that transforms an everyday object into a powerful emblem of American heritage. The story of the 2021 quarter begins decades before its release with the establishment of the America Beautiful Quarters program, which launched in 2010 and continued through 2021, a monumental program that celebrated national parks and historic sites from every state territory. And the District of Columbia, the final year of this series, arrived in 2021, featuring the Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site, and it marked the conclusion of a 12-year journey through the landscapes and cultural milestones of the United States. The Mint prepared for this ending long in advance, understanding that the closing of such a monumental program would need a tribute worthy of American history, and that tribute came in the form of the Washington Crossing, the Delaware Quarter, released later in 2021. A standalone design meant to honor one of the most pivotal moments of the American Revolution. Before we get to that design, we must appreciate how the first coin of 2021, the Tuskegee Airmen Quarter, pays tribute to a heroic chapter of American history. The Tuskegee Airmen were the first African-American military pilots who served during World War II, defying both the enemy abroad and the discrimination within their own country. They trained at Moton Field in Alabama, a location now preserved as the Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site. The design on the reverse of the 2021 quarter shows a Tuskegee Airman pilot standing proudly before the iconic Moton Field Hangar 1 as a P-51 Mustang flies overhead. The detailed imagery captures the courage and determination of the pilots and reflects the legacy they left behind from their first training sessions to their fearless missions over Europe. The Tuskegee Airmen reshaped the American military and paved the way for integration within the armed forces. Their historical significance elevated the final coin of the America the Beautiful series into something much larger than a simple collectible. It became a monument in miniature metallas. The Tuskegee Airmen Quarter completed one era the United States Mint prepared to bridge the past and the future through the Washington Crossing, the Delaware Quarter, which would take its place in circulation later in 2021. This coin stands apart from the large multi-year series because it pays tribute to a single moment in American history, a moment so iconic that it has been immortalized in paintings, textbooks, museums, and now in the pockets of millions. The design portrays General George Washington as he stands aboard the Durham boat during the famous 1776 crossing of the Delaware River, a daring operation carried out on Christmas night under brutal winter conditions, ice floating on the river, frigid winds battering the soldiers who lacked proper clothing. And yet Washington pushed forward, leading his troops toward a crucial victory at the Battle of Trenton. This victory revitalized the American Revolution at a time when morale was dangerously low, and it solidified Washington's legacy as a bold and visionary leader. Engraver Michael Gaudioso crafted the 2021 Washington Crossing, the Delaware design, with intense attention to detail, capturing the texture of Washington's coat, the movement of the waves, the angles of the oars, and the sense of determination carved into the scene. The obverse of the coin continued to feature the familiar portrait of George Washington, originally designed by John Flanagan in 1932 for the Washington Quarter, but it underwent refinements to adapt to modern minting techniques, bringing sharper definition and improved clarity. The result was a coin that honored both the origins of American independence and the origins of the Quarter series itself, blending historical significance with modern craftsmanship. 2021 Quarter holds a special place not only in numismatic history but in American cultural memory because it represents a year of transition, a bridge between two eras of design and symbolism. Collectors often view transitional years as highly significant because they reflect moments when the Mint shifts its creative direction, and 2021 is precisely such a year. It closed the door on the America the Beautiful program and set the stage for the American Women Quarters program launching in 2022, making the Washington Crossing, the Delaware Quarter, final standalone national design before the next major series arrived. This gives the 2021 Quarter a unique identity, placing it at a crossroads between the past and the future. Production of the 2021 Quarter involved all major U.S. Mint facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each playing a different role. Philadelphia and Denver struck the circulating coins, while San Francisco produced both proof coins. And silver proof coins collectors are particularly drawn to the high relief details achieved in the proof versions, where mirrored fields and frosted figures create a breathtaking contrast, bringing history to life with depth and precision. The mint's technological advancements in striking pressure metallurgy and die creation allowed for exceptional definition in 2021 quarters, making them some of the most visually impressive examples of modern circulation coinage. And the technical details, the deeper historical narrative behind the 2021 quarter gives it the strength to carry a 2-hour documentary-style exploration. The Tuskegee Airmen story alone spans decades of courage, hardship, dedication, and triumph, from training challenges and racial barriers to aerial combat achievements that rivaled and surpassed many other Allied units. Then the Washington crossing the Delaware design opens the door to the full sweep of Revolutionary War history, enabling a journey through Washington's strategy, the conditions of the Continental Army, the morale of the colonies, the broader implications of the Trenton Campaign, and its critical role in shaping America's path to independence. This coin becomes a starting point for storytelling, not just about metal and minting, but about the people, the struggles, the victories, and the symbolism that shaped the nation. When you present the 2021 quarter on your YouTube channel, you are not just presenting a coin, you are presenting a historical bridge between World War II heroism and Revolutionary War leadership, between a modern civil rights legacy and the birth of American liberty, between the end of a great numismatic program and the dawn of another. The coin becomes a storyteller, and your video becomes the voice that brings these stories to life, guiding your viewers through the layers of meaning etched into every ridge and line of its design. And this journey begins with a hook so strong that your audience will not want to look away, as you promise them a story carved in metal, minted with meaning, and spanning centuries of American transformation. Imagine holding a coin that is not just metal but a doorway into America's deepest legacy of conservation, a small circular canvas that tells the story of how a nation learned to protect its own natural soul. The 2020 Marsh-Billings Rockefeller quarter from the America the Beautiful series stands as one of the most meaningful and symbolically rich designs ever struck by the United States Mint, and from the moment you turn it in your hand, you realize that this is more than currency. It is a story of stewardship, responsibility, and a vision that shaped the landscapes we walk on today. And as we begin this journey, you are about to step into a living timeline that traces more than 100 years of American environmental history, beginning long before the coin existed, back when the seeds of conservation were only just being planted in the heart of the nation. Because the Marsh-Billings Rockefeller coin was crafted not merely to honor a place, but to honor an idea, the idea that the land around us is a trust handed from generation to generation, and that each of us must decide whether we will leave it weaker or stronger than we found it. The site chosen for the coin, the Marsh-Billings Rockefeller National Historical Park in Vermont, is one of the most powerful symbols of this legacy, for it is the only national park dedicated entirely to the history of conservation itself. The roots of this story begin with George Perkins Marsh, born in 1801, a man whose writings shaped global understanding of how human beings can destroy or protect the environment. Marsh lived at a time when America's forests were being cut down at astonishing speed, and soil was being stripped of life, yet he was among the first thinkers to warn that careless treatment of land could destroy civilizations. His groundbreaking book, Man and Nature, written in 1864, laid the intellectual foundation for the conservation movement, and the home where he grew up would later become one of the cornerstones of American environmental philosophy. Years later, in the late 19th century, Frederick Billings, a successful lawyer, railroad builder, and vision-driven thinker, purchased the Marsh estate. Billings had been inspired by Marsh's writings and believed in sustainable forestry and land restoration. Long before the terms were widely understood, he transformed the property through reforestation, dairy farming, innovation, and scientific land management, turning it into a living model of how responsible stewardship could build prosperity while healing the earth. The legacy continued into the 20th century with the Rockefeller family, particularly Mary French Rockefeller and Lawrence Rockefeller, who inherited the property and expanded its mission. Lawrence Rockefeller became a giant in the world of national parks, donating land, improving trail systems, and supporting environmental education across the United States. And when the property officially became a national historical park in 1992, it served as a tribute to every generation that had shaped conservation, from Marsh to Billings to Rockefeller, each contributing a layer of vision, dedication, and care. So when the U.S. Mint decided to honor this site on the 2020 quarter, it created a design that encapsulated all these generations in a single powerful image. The reverse of the coin features a young girl planting a Norway spruce tree, symbolizing the passing of stewardship from one generation to the next. Behind her stands a mature forest, representing more than a century of deliberate conservation work and the hands-on actions that preserved this land. The act of planting is not just gardening, but a message to the future, telling us that every legacy begins with a single seed, and every seed planted with care can grow into a nation-changing idea. The image represents knowledge, responsibility, and the hope that future Americans will value the land as deeply as those who came before. The designers wanted the coin to speak without words, using the language of imagery to communicate the beauty of sustainable forestry and the unbroken chain of those who protected it. Imagine a young viewer seeing this coin for the first time and realizing that small actions today will ripple across generations long after we are gone. The obverse, of course, retains the familiar portrait of George Washington, first sculpted by John Flanagan, but its presence beside the reverse reminds us that America's identity is tied not only to history and leadership, but also to the landscapes that shaped the nation. Now, as we dive deeper into the Marsh Billings Rockefeller story, you will see how this quarter becomes a doorway into topics like the rise of American conservation, the development of sustainable forestry, the evolution of environmental education, or Rockefeller family's enormous influence on national parks, the growth of the America the Beautiful Quarter program, and even the artistic process behind the coin itself. The America the Beautiful series, launched in 2010, sought to capture the soul of America's natural and historic treasures. And by the time we reached 2020, the series was nearing completion, with only a few designs left to release. This gave the 2020 coins a special weight and significance, each one representing a chapter of national identity in a program that spanned more than a decade. The Marsh Billings Rockefeller coin stood out not because of dramatic mountains or sweeping canyons, but because it honored a philosophy, a movement, and a responsibility. Rather than a single landmark, it invited Americans to consider what kind of environmental legacy they themselves wished to leave behind. As the 2020 coin entered circulation, it became a teaching tool, a collectible, and a constant reminder of the fragile balance between human progress and ecological preservation. Collectors admired its artistic clarity, historians valued its narrative, and the park itself gained a renewed wave of attention. The Marsh Billings Rockefeller quarter continued to circulate through market hands' pockets and collections, sparking everyday conversations about conservation and connecting millions of Americans with the story of environmental stewardship. And as you explore this history through the next chapters, you will uncover how early conservation ideas emerged, how the Billings family transformed a declining landscape into a thriving ecological model, how Lawrence Rockefeller influenced American recreation and national parks, and how the U.S. Mint transformed all those layers of history into a single timeless design. This is not just a coin, this is a chronicle pressed into metal, a legacy you can hold. And as you follow this long journey through decades and generations, you will see how a small quarter became a symbol of one of the most important ideas in American history, that caring for the land is caring for the future. And now let us step further into the story that shaped the 2020 Marsh Billings Rockefeller quarter and the conservation legacy that continues to inspire America today. Imagine holding a small piece of metal that carries the silent footsteps of ancient peoples, a coin that does not just shine but whispers across centuries and invites you into a world that existed long before the United States was even imagined. This is the story of the 2017 Effigy Mounds quarter, a coin that transforms American history into a timeless symbol of culture, memory, and landscape. And in this video, we will journey deep into the origins, the meaning, and the lasting legacy of one of the most spiritually powerful quarters ever struck by the United States Mint. And as you settle and prepare yourself, because what you are about to hear is not just a coin history, but a gateway into the heart of the upper Mississippi River Valley, a place where mounds shaped like living creatures rise from the earth, carrying the secrets of civilizations whose stories still pulse beneath the soil. 2017 Effigy Mounds quarter stands as the very first release of the America the Beautiful series for that year, marking the 36th coin in a monumental 56 coin program launched in 2010, created to honor the national parks and historic sites that define the American landscape. The Effigy Mounds National Monument in Iowa was chosen not simply for its natural beauty, but because it holds some of the oldest and most mysterious man-made structures in North America. Mounds crafted from earth itself, rising in deliberate shapes of animals, including bears, birds, and creatures of spiritual importance. These mounds, built between 600 and 1200 AD, are not random formations. They are intentional representations of sacred symbols believed to be connected to ancient Native American ceremonies, communities, and cosmology. Creation of the Effigy Mounds quarter was steeped in extensive research, cultural consultation, and artistic reverence. The United States Mint wanted to honor these mounds without diminishing or simplifying their significance, so the final design chosen for the reverse side of the coin features a breathtaking aerial view for bear-shaped effigy mounds positioned gracefully on a high ridge overlooking the Mississippi River Valley. This artwork captures the perspective that ancient builders intended, because the true power and meaning of these mounds can only be fully appreciated from above, where the shapes reveal themselves as purposeful, spiritual images. The reverse was designed by U.S. Mint Artistic Infusion Program artist Richard Masters and sculpted by Mint engraver Renata Gordon. Their collaboration allowed them to transform thousands of years of cultural symbolism into a single powerful image. The choice to depict the bear effigies was intentional. Bears were associated with strength, protection, guardianship, and deep spiritual significance among many Native American cultures. The mounds themselves serve as sacred sites, burial locations, ceremonial spaces, and living connections to people who inhabited the region long before European contact. In the obverse side of the 2017 quarter, the familiar portrait of George Washington remains a constant anchor, a design originally created by John Flanagan in 1932. The profile of the first president has been a defining symbol of U.S. coinage for nearly a century, representing the nation's founding and its enduring approach to commemorating history through currency. The pairing of Washington's face with the ancient mounds creates a powerful contrast between the relatively young United States and the much older cultural heritage that predates it by more than 1,000 years. Minting of the Effigy Mounds quarter began with the customary production at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco facilities, each mint mark carrying its own significance: P for Philadelphia, D for Denver, and S for San Francisco. Both circulating and collector versions were created, including business strikes, uncirculated strikes, and stunning proof coins. Collectors quickly noticed the artistic beauty of the design, making it one of the standout issues of the 2017 lineup and a favorite among those who appreciate archaeological and indigenous history. To understand the true power and meaning of this quarter, we must look deeper into the origins of Effigy Mounds National Monument itself. Established in 1949, the monument protects more than 200 prehistoric mounds, including at least 31 in the form of animals. The people who built these effigies were part of what archaeologists call the late woodland culture, tribes that lived in the Midwest between 600 and 1200 AD. These cultures built mounds not as random piles of earth, but as ceremonial statements of identity, belief, and connection to the spiritual world. Some of the mounds served as burial sites, while others appear to mark celestial alignments, seasonal events, clan symbols, or sacred spaces for rituals. Placement of the effigy mounds along the Mississippi River was not accidental. These ancient builders understood the land, its energy, its visibility, and its orientation. Many mounds align with sunrises, sunset paths, seasonal cycles, and the natural flow of the surrounding environment. They were built using simple tools but executed with incredible precision, requiring hundreds of hours of coordinated labor, showing that these communities had rich social organization and shared cultural vision. When the U.S. Mint chose effigy mounds for the America the Beautiful series, it was an acknowledgement not only of natural beauty, but of the deep indigenous history woven into the fabric of the United States. This coin was crafted to raise awareness of ancient cultures whose knowledge, craftsmanship, and spirituality remain underappreciated in mainstream history. The Mint even consulted with tribal representatives, archaeologists, historians, and cultural preservation experts to ensure the design resonated respectfully and accurate. Throughout its release year, the 2017 effigy mounds quarter circulated from hand to hand across the nation, quietly reminding millions of Americans of a history far older than Washington or Jefferson and far more connected to the land itself. Many people who received the coin did not realize they were holding a representation of a 1,000-year-old sacred site in miniature form, but collectors and historians immediately recognized its value, not just monetarily, but culturally. The coin became a conversation starter, a teaching tool, a symbol of mindfulness and heritage. Coin also plays a powerful role for those who visit Effigy Mounds National Monument, walking through the forest trails, climbing the overlooks, and standing beside the massive animal shapes formed in the earth. People feel a quiet presence, as if the land itself is speaking through the mounds. The coin captures that feeling, allowing people who may never travel to Iowa to still connect with the spirit of the ancient builders. As we trace the legacy of this quarter, we also recognize that it is part of a broader movement to acknowledge and preserve Native American history in public spaces. Coins may seem small, but they are storytellers. Each one leaving the mint carries narratives, artistry, culture, and memory circulating through everyday life and ending up in pockets, jars, collections, and displays. This 2017 Effigy Mounds quarter functions not just as currency, but as cultural preservation. In telling the story of this coin, we uncover the story of a people who watched the Mississippi flow long before the founding fathers dreamed of a new nation, people who honored the land by shaping it into symbols of spiritual power, people whose legacy still rises gently beneath the forests of Iowa. And the 2017 quarter becomes one of the most accessible invitations to explore that ancient world